When we started rehearsals, you said that your actors in Vienna are jealous of the Polish colleagues because Polish colleagues are working on O'Neill play. Is this drama so important for actors? Why do they love to play O'Neill?
Well, I think in the first place it are wonderful roles. I mean, it's only 4 characters. It's a family. So everybody knows, I think, the basic situation. And it's also a family of actors. So it's theater in the theater. And it's also a topic which, to my opinion, is probably timeless and certainly very relevant for today because it's about addiction. And I think that we're living in a time where addiction is not only a huge problem, but it's something which is partly created. We just have to think about sugar addiction, which is created by the industry, nicotine addiction, shopping addiction.
Social media.
Social media. So I think in the meantime, addiction has become to, let's say, a marketing tool, and that makes it so relevant and so modern. What is fascinating me, an ancient character in that sense, the character of a Greek tragedy, because when you start to think about addiction, that has actually very enormous old dimensions. I mean, where does addiction start? It's in the meantime also proven that even animals are addicted. I read once a text that told that elephants are visiting or drinking from a certain tree, juice from a tree, and are just stoned every night. So, and then fall on their side near to a lake that is searching where they feel safe. So I think it's also part of an essential need of maybe all species, maybe just human beings, to deeply relax in a world that is extremely frightening. It forces you to survive. So we have this need in our brains to let go, to relax. And of course, there are, let's say, substances that help us to relax, but these substances are extremely addictive. Addiction is the thing which leads also to self-destruction, and that's something we see very much in our society, this aspect of self-destruction.
What was your personal reason to do O'Neill play? Was it connected with the theme or with the form of psychological drama?
Well, I wouldn't say so much the psychological aspect of it, because O'Neill was fascinated by Sigmund Freud, also Jung, and he wanted actually to adapt these theories to classical drama, and he tried with a play like Morning Becomes Electra to put the family in psychoanalytical dimensions, which leads, to my opinion, to simplistic statements in his plays, and sometimes also very pathetic and sometimes also very old-fashioned statements, which makes it also sometimes comedy-like, to my opinion. So I'm not such a, let's say, believer in psychological dimension of the characters which O'Neill is trying to give them. I'm much more like the contradiction of us human beings. What I mean is that he shows a family, and that's for me already a reason to do this play, because I think we all know this context. We are all sons and daughters of fathers and mothers, and that leads to patterns of repetition, of imitation, of addiction, and that is very fascinating for me, that we're born in a context which is already determining us from the very first moment we see daylight, actually, and how this context leads to repetition, to imitation, and but also to absurdism. Because in this family, for example, what I like very much, and what for me is also very funny, is that the father is blaming the son, but the son is blaming the brother with the same arguments as the father is blaming the oldest son. So it's not only a family, it's also a family with 2 sons. And there is an older son and a younger son. When they become blamed, they blame the weakest in the chain. And it's a kind of absurd chain reaction. And nobody is able to stop that chain reaction. And that's also something which fascinates me at the play, that there is this aspect of blaming to free yourself from guilt. And that's something I still have no answer to, because guilt, culpability, is so deeply rooted in our culture. I mean, it starts in the Garden of Eden, actually, where they ate from the apple, and since then, we as humanity, we are sinners. We are actually to blame that we live, that we try even to let's say, to enjoy the apples of life. So there is this guilt, which is, I don't know where it starts, but this awareness of guilt that is weighing on us, and to relieve ourselves from this guilt, we need not only drugs, we need not only addiction, but we need to blame. And it is this endless chain reaction of blaming each other which keeps us actually triggered by this family. So that dimension is fascinating me, because that gives the play kind of, as I said, a dimension of a Greek tragedy, because where does it start, this feeling of being guilty? I always was thinking, you know, when I became a father, and that's in the meantime 46 years ago, I immediately started to feel guilty.
Why?
I think it's part of nature, because suddenly you have to take care about this little life that is there, this baby, which is helpless actually. And you know, when I don't take care, that can have enormous consequences. So you need to work, you need to be in time on your job, you must take your responsibility. So there is a kind of primal feeling of guilt, I have the feeling, towards a newborn, and certainly a newborn relative, a newborn son or daughter. I noticed, for example, now I became, in the meantime, grandfather, that I don't have this feeling of guilt anymore. So when they want an ice cream, they can have an ice cream. When they want two, they can have two ice creams. I would never allow my own children to have two ice creams on a day. So there is this relief of this natural feeling of guilt. And that's fascinating me. Where is it coming from? Where is this? Because when you think about guilt, you think, okay, it's a Catholic principle.
Yeah, it exists only in a Christian system of...
Yeah, it's typical product of our culture, of our morality. But I think there is also a kind of natural, instinctive morality. Probably the 10 Commandments are a result of that. The interesting thing is that the East says that this morality is relative. The West says this morality is actually absolute. So, for example, I heard once Buddhists saying, you know, lying, actually you're not allowed to lie, but sometimes you need to lie to save somebody's life, maybe. So then is lying actually a virtue? So it's not a sin. So we have in our, let's say, cultural context towards guilt an enormous absolute reaction, and the blaming of the other to relieve yourself from your guilt in the family is, to my opinion, a traumatizing experience.
Lying is the most important feature of these characters. They are constantly lying to themselves and to the others. How it is? What kind of challenge it is for a director to direct a piece in which hardly no one tells the truth?
Yeah, you know, I love actually characters on the stage that are lying, because I think, first of all, it's a perfect mirror of our lives. I think we're constantly lying, actually. We're lying towards ourselves, we're lying towards the world around us. It makes, let's say, this lying in a way bearable. It makes it funny when you see it. You attract yourself on your own lies when you see other people lying. So, and it is, in a way, it's also funny, because we're talking about this play and it has huge issues and huge topics. But for me, it's in the same way, it's also the absurdity of being a family, the absurdity of being caught and constantly being obliged to be the right member of this family, constantly to lie, actually, that everything is okay and that we are good and that we are fine in our family. The problems are the neighbors, not we, you know. And that's also a lie where it starts. As long as we are okay, then we can tackle the world. And this lie is also not only cultivated in the family, it's all over the place in our Western world, in our capitalistic world. You know, the media is lying.
Politicians.
The politicians are lying. Advertisement is lying.
Yeah.
We're living in a world which is full of lying. And I love to disguise this on the stage. Yeah.
But there is one character in your adaptation who doesn't lie, and this is Kathleen, the servant. You decided that she will be a kind of narrator of the whole story. She reads aloud side notes from O'Neill's play. What is her role in the structure?
It's a good question because I don't know.
Okay.
I'm still finding out, actually.
Is she a neutral observer, psychoanalyst, or just a random person who is a witness?
I noticed that I always ask her to have almost a kind of compassionate attitude towards what's happening on the stage. And when I'm thinking about that, why I asked that, and it has a lot to do with Eugene O'Neill himself, because I discovered this play when I was very young. I was at a theater school, and I became, through this play, actually an absolute fan of Eugene O'Neill. Not because I adored him because of his genius text, because many of his texts I found too pathetic and ridiculous. But at the same time, I was fascinated by his directive notes. So what she's reading are actually the directive notes of Eugene O'Neill himself. And they are sometimes very excessive. They are very long. It's almost like reading a novel. So, and of course, they are also, like the text of Eugene O'Neill, too explicit for our modern mind. They're too much explaining why A is watching like this and B is reacting like that. So I just kept a few phrases because he has written this play as he writes to his wife, Carlotta Monterey, to relieve himself from this family where he was entangled in, these family triggers, these family patterns he was entangled in. And it was for him a kind of psychoanalysis, actually, because he described really one-to-one his father, who was an actor, his mother, who was addicted to morphine. Himself, he was the youngest one in the part. His older brother, who was an alcoholic and a would-be actor. So he one-to-one, like Strindberg, actually, he projected his own life onto paper. Molière did the same. I think Shakespeare also. I think we all in the theater are doing that, more or less projecting our own experiences on the stage to understand and to find peace. And in the few phrases I kept from him, I sensed actually the love he had for this crazy family, because it's an absolute crazy family. The father is an actor who played more than, how many times?
2,000 and something.
2,000 times the same role.
The same
and
role.
Only this role.
The Count of Monte Cristo.
The Count of Monte Cristo. When you see a picture of it with a huge wig as a kind of wild man on an island. So it must have been ridiculous. And he played with his sons because he had no ensemble. And you can read in the letters or in the diaries of O'Neill that they were mostly drunk on the stage. So that must have been really a theater reality, which was at the same time absurd and an inferno also, because they were not seen as big artists. They were just gypsies, actually, playing a story on the road and traveling from one hotel to another. This one phrase of Eugene O'Neill where he says on his deathbed, I knew it, I was born in a hotel room and I would die in a goddamn hotel room, says for me so much about human existence, never coming home, always being on the road, restlessness, always searching for this moment of arriving in yourself, finding peace with yourself, finding peace with your past. And in these few sentences I kept from him, and that is said by Kathleen, the servant, I hear this attempt to find love for actually the inferno of the family he's described, because it's an inferno. A mother that is addicted to morphine, I wouldn't like to live with a situation like that. It must be horror, actually.
So that's why you say that this play is a deepest act of love.
Absolutely.
And not a revenge on the family.
Absolutely. We may not forget, and that's also unique about the play, that one member of the family, the youngest brother, is actually so sick that he's dying, that they don't know he will survive and how he will survive. So he's having cancer in our adaptation. In O'Neill's adaptation, he had tuberculosis, which was also in that time a deadly disease. And I mean, this aspect combined with, I would call it the unconditional love you feel towards your children. This brings this mother and this father in a situation of enormous, they have to deal with an enormous love, with seeing somebody dying in their inner circle, which they can't live without. And that creates pain which they can't bear. And in this pain they start to blame each other. But actually in the blaming and in the lying, to pretending that there's nothing, that everything is okay, the root of that is an enormous unconditional love, actually.
This is the second work with Polish actors after Three Sisters, co-produced by TR Warszawa and the Stary Theatr. What is distinctive about Polish acting that inspires you? What differs Polish actors from, let's say, German, Belgium?
I recognize a lot of Flemish actors and the Polish actors.
All right.
I'm coming from Flanders, as you know. I'm living in Antwerp, and I grew up in Belgium, in Flanders. And I recognize a lot of the Flemish theater culture, or the attitude of Flemish actors, in that sense that, and I love that, in that sense that they love to seek, they love to search, they love to experiment. I have an enormous admiration for the Polish theater also, because, as you know, I grew up with Tadeusz Kantor. I saw all the Kieślowski films. I was a big admirer of Kieślowski. Of course, I saw the theater of Grotowski. So there is, let's say, an attitude to dealing with theater and with arts, which I feel as very close. I love to see how the actors, are trying things out, and from the very first day accepted that I said, let's not fix things, just let's research, let's experiment, let's try. And they have no problems being ugly. You know, there are actors who don't like to be ugly on the stage, and that's a very decisive thing in your attitude as an actor, that you say, well, I don't care. I love myself. That's the most important thing. I don't care what the audience says. And that's something I can enjoy every day, actually. Yeah.
Super. Yeah. I hope it won't be your last experience with Polish theater.
It certainly won't.
Hope so. Thank you very much.